Welcome to tonight's cabinet meeting of Eastleigh Borough Council. My name is Councillor Corben and I'll be conducting the meeting tonight. This meeting will be video recorded and will be uploaded to the council's website in due course. More information is available on the website. So moving on to our agenda, item number 1. Nikki, do we have apologies, please?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor House and Councillor Lucas.
Thank you very much indeed. You have drawn the short straw with myself this evening. Councillor House sends his apologies. He has been in London meeting the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Housing, and they've had a round table meeting this afternoon. So he wouldn't have missed this meeting pretty much for anything, but he did think that was a priority. We will proceed with cabinet this evening, and I hope that meeting has gone well with other council leaders from around the country. Item number 2, declarations of interest, please. Does anyone have a declaration of interest that I'd like to give tonight? Thank you very much indeed. That's a no. Minutes are in the report. Pages 5 to 12. We now move on to the minutes for the meeting held just a couple of weeks ago, 15th of July. Can I now approve these for the record? Can I have a proposer, please? I'm going to go with Tonya. Great. And a seconder. I was looking that way, so I'm sorry. Yeah. And this meeting this evening is a really important meeting because it's about future of housing, particularly one important Heath. And so it's really important that that members across the council have had plenty of opportunity to understand and to get a more complete picture of what plans are for one important Heath. And we'll come on shortly to talk about the lower acre and the first residential housing tender. But members have had the opportunity in various ways to have a visit to the site. There was also an all-member briefing last Thursday, which was well attended, and there was also the Ordinary Resources Committee meeting this Monday, just gone, two nights ago. And lots and lots of questions were asked at that meeting, and I had to watch, and as was Councillor Kyrle, and we both came away really pleased at the engagement actually and the understanding for what council is trying to do here. So we have some recommendations, and that's item 5, recommendations from A&R, which are all included within the pack. And I think it's important that we recognise all 6 recommendations. So we have some recommendations here, and I'll ask for a proposer shortly. The recommendations are regarding the tender award for the 1 first residential parcel and the approval to progress the on-site primary school. Their recommendation number 1, that a report containing lessons learned from phase 1 be presented to Ordinary Resources Committee before the second phase of the development. Verbal updates regarding the 1 Heath project come to every A&R meeting, with written updates at least quarterly to ensure transparency. That the committee receive regular updates on the status of school provision as part of the regular updates. The committee urged Cabinet to emphasise the importance of liaison with government regarding grants. The committee would like to understand the council's method for delivering social and affordable housing on the 1 Heath development once grant details are known. And finally, Cabinet should also be aware of the risk that proposed changes to designs at the lower acre, should the contract be awarded, will result in the need for changes to the planning approval. This is considered by the project team to be a minimal risk, as the changes will adopt a more traditional approach to design and will result in a reduced building footprint. So that is very clear. Can I have a proposer, please? Rupert, thank you very much. And the seconder. Brilliant. Very much indeed. And are we all agreed on those points? Good, thank you, councillors. So we move on now to the main item this evening, which is item number 6. Tender award for 1 Whatney First residential parcel and approval of the progress the on-site primary school. Before we start this, I'm just going to say a couple of things. The level and detail of the report which we've got has not just happened. It is a very, very detailed report, and it was acknowledged by Cllr Resources, particularly the other evening, that the report was a very, very high quality, and was, despite being involved and covering many areas, extremely well written. So I would like to thank Sarah in particular, because I know this has taken up a lot of time, but also Chris and the rest of the team, because it really is impressive that this has got to stage in the time that it has. So thank you very much indeed. There as well. I can't call everyone's name out, but the whole team have been fantastic. So moving on to the paper. I'm going to ask Sarah just to introduce the report, bearing in mind that we've all had lots of chances to ask questions and to really understand it. So won't go through the whole report. Any detail you'll probably be pleased to make, because we'll still be here tomorrow. But Sarah, can I ask you to introduce the report, please? And can I just remind councillors that there are parts of the papers which are exempt, and they are very specifically exempt and commercially sensitive. So if we stray, someone will stand up and wave their hands at us if we go too far off piste. But we'll just be conscious of that. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So I think you probably haven't been to at least one of the briefings if you didn't go to the Audit Resources Committee. So this paper covers a number of things, the most significant being the award, potential award of a tender for the first 381 homes for the Lower Acre at Horton Heath. There are some other bits in there as well, though. There's an update on the primary school provision. There's discussion about ongoing organisational capacity for the council and how we're going to take this both through delivery, but also what we do with the houses and other assets at the end. So there's discussion around those elements. We've tried to wrap into that all of the financial side of life, so how it all impacts not just the cost of the tender, but also the impacts on the business plan, and it talks a little bit about government grant as well because of the uncertainty around things like that. And we've tried to put a fair balance on the risks of continuing an awarding contract, and then the other options if you choose not to award the contract, and also the other risks around, you know, things like the organisational capacity, school provision, the timing, all of those things. So I think it gives a full picture. There's an awful lot of information, which is why we tried to hold the briefing, and Audit Resources, I would agree, was a really strong committee that talked about a lot of things. And we've had separate discussions with some councillors who followed up independently with some questions. But that's the premise of the meeting. Lots of us are here, either dialed in or here in person, to take questions from various points. So over to you, Chair.
Great. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's also worth noting as well that our auditors were in attendance at the all-member briefing last Thursday. They have all had sides of the paper, and as Sarah says, members have had the opportunity to actually take up either written questions separately, or have had, I know, have had private meetings with members of the team to ask those questions face to face as well. So again, thanks to everyone that has engaged, because this is such a major contract that we're talking about approving tonight. It's really important that as council leaders we do understand it, and we do weigh the risks that are involved, but also weigh the benefits as well. So can we open up initially to questions? And again, just bear in mind that these relate to exempt matters. We will need to go to exempt, but we can pick those up afterwards if we need to. So any general questions, please, from colleagues. Councillor Kyrle.
Now, I know this has been touched on, audit resources, a couple of times. I still just a pretty very simple answer actually. It's about the school provision, because in the report, obviously, it does say about the contribution of 20 million or whatever being now taken, I think, from SI6 or whatever, so capital projects. So is that to enable that to come forward earlier, or what's the rationale behind that? I think we sort of touched on it at A&R, but I couldn't quite understand the rationale for that. It also, I think, says in the report that actually the potential cost of the school could actually outstrip 20 million or whatever that we were putting towards that. How would we then look to bridge that gap if it came over 20 million? Sorry.
So traditionally, as a developer, obviously the developer pays the 106 over and Hampshire delivers the school. The council's preference is that we deliver it ourselves. So the point of the reallocation in the report is kind of to make that point and to say that we're taking that 106 contribution that we built in the business plan and we're allocating it as a capital budget to enable the team to go forward and make the school happen. So it doesn't accelerate delivery, it just power only rather than.
Obviously, we like a school there at some point. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
we get around to it.
Exactly. And on the subject of cost, don't yet know what the cost is. Working with the consultant to come up with that. When we do, we'll have to come back to cabinet and decide. I think if we're honest, it is going to be higher than the budget. Do we think, Chris?
We anticipate it being higher.
I think the word was likely to. I think in the report.
Yeah,
likely to. So I was just thought it talks about such significant sums worries me slightly.
Yeah.
Given the obviously the overall expenditure, if you like, of the council on this project.
No, exactly. And you're right to pick up on it, and that's why we put it in there so that it does flag that it may come up more expensive. If it does, we'll come back to cabinet. So we'll flow through this plan, come back to you and suggest how we cover those costs, or do we scale back something on the school. So until we've done that bit of work, we don't know. So you'll have to bear with us while we do that, and then we'll come back, and then that will be another discussion for cabinet to have.
Any other questions?
Spencer's just went to.
Spencer online.
Yes, just to emphasise, it's not until we actually assemble the team and actually start working through the feasibility can we actually put some real some real facts around sort of the figures. So a lot of the cost planning that has been done on sort of fairly high level. We know sort of the rough footprint from the sort of DFE sort of requirements, but it's not until you start getting into the level of detail that you can actually sort of hone into the detail, and then we can sort of come back and report at a later date as to sort of how that's tracking against the developer contributions that's been set and assigned in the section 106.
Thanks, Spencer. One of the reasons for the school being self-delivered by Eastleigh is around the design code and having buildings which fit in really well with the rest of the site and the local centre. So really important, and it's something that we've said from clearly was a hope that we would be able to. Any other questions?
It's just and I agree exactly what you're saying, because the concern about having a off-the-shelf school, I think, is you'll just end up with one of these just and I don't mean this in a rude way, but a sort of prefab box element of delivery, which we've seen on some of the housing estates, which really could have been designed a little bit nicer, I think, made to look better, and probably better use of more efficient use of space and things like that, in my personal opinion. I'm not an architect, but certainly I think they could make it look more appealing to people. But it was about the sort of the overall cost, if you like, and I know this was discussed at A&R of the project, given the fact that we've had a number of papers come to us. It's obviously a huge undertaking at the council, and I'm fully supportive, please don't get me wrong. But I think it's just about surety with regards to increase in costs and increase in borrowing with answer to this, because we're being asked again for another sort of reasonable chunk, if you like, of borrowing, which I know is going to come against future surpluses. But of course, that's a legacy for somebody else, in effect, really, because I would suggest if the project is going as long as it is, some of us won't be in this room, I would suggest. We may all be relaxing by a beach somewhere, or I don't know, whatever. But yeah, so it's just really the surety of how do we know really how much, because I see this, the EV charging is extra 2 million or whatever we've got, I think it's now 16 million or something, I always think it is something like that. And is some of that down to increased build cost, if you like, or is this just the fact that we really just didn't know how expensive this was to deliver, to start to get it off the ground?
So this goes as well to a question around safeguarding the other services of the council, and making sure that those services are not affected by the build at one point. I think that's important to ask us as well, Sarah.
Yes, so I don't know what the final figure will be out to Cllr, obviously, because we're starting off. I would say that, I hope I'm right, this initial phase is the first time we've done this on such scale. We've learned an awful lot, hence audit resources are a requirement for a lessons learned. So that doesn't mean we've found everything, but it means we've learned an awful lot along the way that we might do things differently next time for the other parcels. We're regularly reviewing the business plan. We're reporting to you every time. I would say there isn't a lot of scope, so we can't have bells and whistles. We need to think more about cost reduction than cost increase, definitely. And we absolutely need to keep an eye on the sales and letting side of life to make sure they keep up with our plans, so that it all balances. Currently, with the business plan as it is, it doesn't impact on the rest of the council because it is completely self-sustaining. In the fullness of time, it does create a nice surplus, but that's some years hence. So, yeah, all I can do is say that this is currently affordable in the business plan, and the business plan has been updated not just because of the cost of the tender, which is higher than we initially thought, but for the other things that we know about. It is still sustainable as it is, but there is less leeway in it, all right. So we have to monitor that very, very carefully going forward.
Thank you very much. So, any other question?
Well, you did ask the question about services.
Yes, so it's self-contained, so it doesn't impact the rest of the general fund.
Yeah, because I think that's really important to stress that again, because I know it wasn't brought up at A&R. I think it's really to stress that it doesn't actually put other kind of other council services or whatever under, and they're not linked in that sort of.
No, not in a financial way. Obviously, there's pressure on the rest of the council to scale up,
but not as in.
Not
connections on the back of
no, that's right, not a financial impact for that, no.
Good.
Just one for me,
Yes.
sorry. In critical, was that something that wasn't in or they've gone up because costs have changed on those things?
So building regulations have changed, so nationally, so we now have to have, you're going to correct me when I'm wrong, an EV charger for every allocated space and for every piece of encouraged parking. So if you've got a driveway, and the cost of that is higher than we had hoped. We haven't got the final strategy for the EV charging. That will come back here again for you to determine, because there's nuances about how people can charge their cars and how that will work. So that will come back here, but that's the premise of the increased cost.
Yeah, pretty much. So there's two slight nuances to what Sarah said. Since we first started talking about electric vehicles in the lower acre, the amount of vehicle charges that are required by building control has increased. So our budget was set on an older version of building control and a lower provision that was required. The other thing that's being recognised in this report is that previously the electric vehicle charging strategy was attached to a private wire network and use of solar assets. And so the capital expenditure to provide the chargers was covered by a business plan that was not one of Alton Heath lower acre. So the private wire is currently not coming forward because we've not got a business plan that sustains the private wire proposal. Still working on it. Allington Solar has been approved, so we can revisit it again in light of that. But those charges still need to be provided, and so the capital is now coming into this project rather than being sat in a different one. So it's not a complete extra or unknown cost, but it's now sitting somewhere in this project where it wasn't before, and the amount that we've got to do has increased.
Question. So the recommendations before us this evening, which I'll run through in just a minute, are bound by a number of risks, and we've talked about those a lot over the last weeks and months. They financial, commercial, procurement. There are a number of risks. I do have one final question about on the financial side, and particularly in grants, Sarah, because grants are a big part of making this work. Can you just give me and us some assurance around the process for securing grants and timeline for doing that, particularly with the new government and the different rules which are likely to come?
So some of the grants, you might have to come in with the detail of the numbers, Chris, but some of the grants we've already had, so infrastructure grant, things like that, which has been multiple millions, we've had those things through. There's the affordable housing grant or the social housing grant in the future, which is the one that's more up in the air. Government has now said they're continuing the local authority housing fund, so that's a positive, but we don't know the final iteration of what they're going to come up with to know which grant we would want to apply for. But it feels more, when we wrote the report, we were saying we think it's going to happen, but we don't know. Now it feels like it's much more it's very likely it's definitely going to happen. We still don't know the final outcome, so we'll come back to you with that, so that you can look at what tenure you want on the site depending on the grant level. So we'll do a bit of financial analysis around that. There's other grants available, and we just keep an ear to the ground really. So Andy and Chris are talking to Homes England quite a lot about grants that are available for different things. There's some capacity funding and things like that. So where there's opportunity for us to knock a door and say we're doing some stuff here, work with us. So there are other grants. It's not just the social housing, but that is the really big one, the social affordable housing grant.
And that comes back to the recommendation from Audit and Resources, of course, talking to government about making sure that we're at the table, and that I guess goes a bit to Keith's meeting today. We've also had correspondence which are actually on the agenda. I haven't read, but we haven't read out, but we have had contact from central government already regarding housing, which is documented here as well.
Before you go further, because it was questions you asked, but just a comment. I know you thanked Sarah and the team for the report, but just want to thank the whole team for including all members and giving us the opportunity of walking around the site, which was a real eye-opener. When you actually get on the site, you see how large it is and how much is staying green, how much is being preserved, the difference that has already been made in the I want to say rivers, but they're more like the ponds and things.
Ponds,
yeah, when we saw them originally, they were stagnant, they were stinking. And the fact that when we were up there just a few weeks ago, we had the ducks on there, and it's really come alive. So I just wanted to thank the whole team for the work they've done so far. It's going to be a fabulous place for people to be able to walk, for their mental health, their absolute well-being. So thanks very much for including us on everything so far. It's been a real eye-opener, a real learning curve.
Great, thank you very much. So looking at the recommendations, if there's no further questions, can I have a proposer and a seconder, please? We put proposer and Councillor Bicknell as seconder. Thank you very much indeed. So the recommendations that we're looking at this evening, before we have any debate, if there is any debate, we are considering, based on the evidence, financial information and balance of risk set out within the report, whether to award the main residential contract for the delivery of the lower acre to the sole bidder, or resolve to progress a different option. Approving an increase to the capital budget of 16.312 million related directly to the tender and increased financing costs to be funded by future scheme surpluses. Approving £2,069,360 to fund the increased costs of the electric vehicle strategy to be funded from future scheme surpluses. Acknowledging the intent, should the contract be awarded this evening, to make post-contract variations that could realise savings from value engineering opportunities, including varying parcel 1A to facilitate redesign of apartment blocks A2 and A3, and to work towards agreement of price for parcel 2, 49 dwellings, by the end of October 2024 to ensure continuity of in-person. Number 6 is acknowledges that should the contract be awarded, confirmation of the continuation with the selected contractor for future phases 2, 3, 3A, 4 and 4A, and the varied 1A will be dependent on future cabinet approval, and reallocates the developer contributions you mentioned earlier of £20,062,156 earmarked as part of the outline planning application for primary school education needs as the capital budget to enable the self-delivery of the school to continue.
Recommendation 2 is that you consider whether to award the contract. Could be crystal clear in recording whether or not you are awarding the contract. Just for the so that we're all 100% clear.
We will be very, very clear, James. Yeah. Is there any debate before we do that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's some really exciting stuff, and that actually finally being able to talk about getting houses out of the ground. I don't think it should be underestimated by anybody outside of this room and your team, Chris, and that how difficult it is doing this sort of project. I think I've said it before, but what because of our transparency being a council and delivering this, what the general public are seeing is basically what the following builders do every day, day in, day out. And now the general public are seeing it and realising that it's not quite so easy, and it's also not cheap. I think that's some people, which we see, but we're taking the difficult decisions. I welcome this proposal. There's a number of things that I see in the report, and I do echo the thanks that have been given by Councillor Kyrle and Councillor Craig, the teams that have worked on the delivery and also on the actual writing of the report, and doing the members' briefing, which was very comprehensive. We're sort of in a position of there's a huge. You don't do anything without risk. Nothing is risk-free. Life is not risk-free, and it's managing that risk. And this is the risk of doing something versus the risk of not doing anything at all, which is great stuff. I'm happy with the recommendation. There are other risks. It's mentioned in the report about retendering. I personally think the risk of going back to retender is too great and too expensive, and it's not an option. Any other option other than this, having looked at all the evidence and been in the briefing and asked various questions and heard answers and what have you, the delays would result in delay into Cllr Acre, and then that actually rebounds on the rest of the whole project. And with those delays come further down the line will come even greater risk, in my view. And of course, at the same time, we also risk not actually delivering houses for people, which is what this is all about. At the end of the day, it's delivering this council's ambition to provide social housing and provide a community that, as Councillor Craig has said, will be good for people to live in, walking in their mental health and well-being, and that. So I'm happy with the recommendation. I'm happy with the tender. And I think that this whole project, in light of the Deputy Prime Minister's announcements yesterday and papers and what have you, I think that actually this puts Eastleigh in a very, very strong position going forward. There's going to be a lot of councils that are going to have a lot of grief in a very short space of time on housing. We've had government housing targets until 2023, the previous government, but they just didn't enforce them because there are some of the councils that didn't actually want to build any houses. Now we're back to where we sort of started. That is what we always base this on. market. And I think overall this will just put us in a very strong position going forward. And that's so yeah, I'm quite happy with the report. I'm quite happy with the recommendation to actually whatever the word is, award the tender. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Any other comments? Yes.
Just to add, Paul and I, our cabinet roles sort of overlap a bit, and we've met lots of families in desperate need for a home they can call their own. We've got some single parents that are actually sofa surfing, waiting for a property to become available. And, it's something that we all take for granted. We've got a home, we've got somewhere that we can go and, it's ours. And I think it's so many grateful families that are going to be out there that are going to benefit from these homes. And it's something so simple that we all take for granted that they're going to absolutely love once they're available. So it's, you look at the list, it's getting bigger and bigger. We just need to get on and do these houses.
Good, thank you very much. Yes, I would just reiterate that exactly. I think from all the doors that we knock as councillors and people that we meet in the street and around the shops when we're in our wards, one of the top 3 items that typically comes up are our houses. Everyone has got older children, offspring that are living at home that just want somewhere to live. And I think the beauty of what we're doing here is that is from a tenure point of view. Some will be sold, some will be rented, some will be affordable. There is a huge commitment to deliver the right types of houses, and I think that goes to exactly what you just said. It's really an exciting development. Yeah.
The only thing I'd come back on is just to re-emphasise the fact that it is the risk. Despite the fact we actually want to buy houses, as Councillor Craig himself said, Chair, that doesn't mean to say that we're blind to the risk. We have weighed up the risk. We've had detailed reports, we've looked at them, we've had, asked questions of officers, we've had briefings, it's been to audit resources, and if you were to speak to anybody in the commercial sector on house building, it is not without risk. The difference here is we don't need to make profit, we just need to there is a technical term for it, isn't it? It's something around social benefit, profit, and whatever. I can't remember the term, but we don't actually need to reward shareholders because our shareholders are the people that be living in the houses. So I just, for the benefit of recording and anyone who might actually look at it, we have not underestimated the risks and made any of our decisions and fully investigated and looked into the risks. And ask the relevant people the questions and poke them and what have you. So
it's fair to say we've probably driven some of the officers completely mad.
Questions.
Yeah, but we've made the difficult decisions because none of them are easy. Risk-free.
When we look back as well as to where the site has come to the infrastructure that's already been put in place as well. We haven't mentioned that this evening, but the people when they start to move in are going to be moving into really high quality homes, not houses that will make them their homes. So we need to decide on this tender, on the contracts. To be really clear, you've all had them in your papers. We are talking about approving and issuing the contract. We've proposed, we've seconded. So can we go to a vote, please, if there's no other questions, no further debate? All those in favour of issuing the contract, please. Very much. That is unanimous. James, are you happy with that? Yeah. With regards to the other recommendations here as well, that we treated that separately, but the other recommendations that I ran through earlier, we'll just take a vote on all of those together. Is that okay? Yeah, please.
Look, just say that for when I think I wasn't going to say anything in debate because I agree with everything you said. There's no point in me reiterating everything, but I think it's really important going, and I know everybody else in this room will say exactly the same thing, that we do have as many checks and balances in place as possible, as we have done right the way from the beginning. And this is a journey all the way through, so we move on. but just to make sure that, and this is the audit resources recommendations cover that, to say that we do need to make sure that there is continuous scrutiny, if you know what I mean, and maybe external advice or whatever the scenario may be, to use all of those tools, if you like, to make sure that we are making significant decisions, which I know will be of great benefit to the people of Eastleigh.
Brilliant, good, thank you, Rupert. So the remaining recommendations plus the recommendations from Audit and Resources, can I have a vote on those, please? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So we need to consider going into exempt business. Are there any additional questions within the exempt business? Thank you very much for steering clear of exempt matters through the debates. Are there any questions that we stopped? Not at the moment. No. Are we going to? We're just talking about whether we're going to at the moment. Would we like to go into exempt business? Please, yes. Okay. So, councillors, part of item 7, we need to consider whether to pass a resolution to whether item 8 should be exempt from disclosure, and if public interest is not disclosing the information outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. May I have a proposal to pass the resolution, please? Councillor Bicknell, and a second, please. Councillor Kyrle, thank you very much indeed. Can we ask our member of the